Okay, folks, so this is Mike Paces, your instructor for Geography 205, and I'm experimenting. I'm really making this up as I go. I've downloaded this screen recording software, so I'm going to try to produce these videos where I go through what I would be teaching you normally in a classroom. You'd be seeing me do it live. Well, I'm going to try to record it so you get that same feel, but it still works in this online class. Hopefully this will work, but again, yeah, I'm making this up as I go, so we'll see how it goes. And feel free to let me know if you have any suggestions for how to make this easier for you, the student, on your end when you're working on this stuff at home. All right, the first thing we're going to do is I just want to show you Windows in general and point out a few things that your own computer might not be set to do or show or whatever. So we're going to set it up like an actual GIS machine. That's the first thing you always want to do when you get a new computer, when you're working in some new place or whatever. You want to make sure your computer itself in Windows is ready to go for what it is you're going to do. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to open up File Explorer. And that's this guy down here in the corner. You can also hit the Windows key and the E key at the same time. I think that still works with Windows 10. So you can do that, Windows and E at the same time. You can click this little guy in the corner. Doesn't matter, but it brings up this File Explorer window. And so this is a way where you can go in and find whatever files you have on your computer, track down things, copy things, whatever you need to do. Hopefully most of you have worked in this File Explorer window, at least a little bit at some point in your life. And if you're a Mac person using a Windows machine for the first time, this is the same thing as Finder in the Mac OS. Now in here, a few things I want to point out. Number one, you should have a dedicated place to save your files. Everything you download from Canvas, the data files I give to you, things that you're working on, map documents that you're producing, all of these different things, I want you to have a dedicated folder where you're going to save that. Okay? If you want to put it on the desktop, fantastic. Documents, you can use this, and you'll see if you've successfully loaded ArcGIS onto your computer, you should have one or two of these ArcGIS folders here. Click on that one. I don't even know with this 10 point. You know what? Ignore the 10.6 one. I don't know if you guys have it or not. Let's see, let's click, there you go. Just that default ArcGIS one. This can work. You can create a file in here, save stuff in here. This default.gdb, we'll talk about that later on in the course. Don't mess with anything that you already see existing here, or at least don't mess with it until I tell you to, or you'll learn enough to know what it is you're doing. But make sure you have a space on your computer somewhere where you can actually save all of your files. Okay, that's thing number one right here. Another thing in the syllabus I mentioned, get a flash drive of some kind of flash storage device, or have some kind of cloud storage backup. I highly recommend that you get ridiculous in terms of how often you back things up, and redundant copies of things and stuff like that. When you're doing GIS work, when you're working with ArcGIS, stuff crashes all the time, or you just get on a roll, you start producing things, and suddenly you can't remember what's important and what isn't. It's whatever happens, you're going to want to have a backup at some moment in time, either the original version of something or just another copy of that thing in case you have some disaster. So something like Google Drive, Microsoft's OneDrive, Dropbox, these different things, they'd all work. You can save your GIS files directly in there, or you can do it the manual way with some kind of flash drive or an actual, external hard drive or something. But not only should you have a place where you're going to save everything, but you should also have some way to back up everything. Okay? Do it. I don't want to hear any complaints about you losing stuff. We should be able to avoid that with these options here. Okay. Next thing we need to do before we really get into GIS and all of that is I want you to click up here. And I should say I'm using Windows 10 right now. If you're using a version of 7 or 8 or something like that, yours may look a little different from mine, but hopefully you can still figure that out. But up here in File Explorer, go to View, and there's just a few things that you should make sure you have checked. Number one, make sure you're in the Details view. Okay, so where it's showing the name of the folder or the file or whatever, this date modified, type, size, and so on. Things like these icons, it's not very useful for what it is we're going to do. You might like to do this, or the list, or whatever view you like. That's fine with anything else, but when you're doing GIS, save everything here to Details, and then also make sure that File Name Extensions is checked. Okay? If I uncheck that, see this Toolbox thing right here, simply says Toolbox, but if I check this, it's toolbox.tbx. That's the extension of the file so that the computer knows what to do with that specific file. Okay? And that's very important for some of the stuff we're going to be dealing with. And so I'll show you that. So again, make sure you're in Details View, and also make sure you've checked the box next to File Name Extensions. And then once you've done that, you can go ahead and close this. Okay, now as we're moving on and getting ready to start doing some GIS work, you should have already downloaded the South America data files from Canvas. So if you haven't done that yet, go into Canvas, go into the Files section, and download the South America data files. And then when you download these things, don't just leave them in your Downloads folder or wherever Windows wants to stick them. Make sure you place them in that place where you're actually going to be doing your work. So if I click on here, go into Documents, let's say I just want to save stuff in here, move that out of the way, I have my South America stuff that I've downloaded, I can just move that in here. So I have it there, and I know where it is, I can always find it, and all of that stuff. Now if I click in here, what I see are a variety of files, and if you notice, we start with cities, and it says .cpg, and we have cities.dbf and .prj and so on. So we have like 7 or 8 or however many that is files, all with the same name, but with a different file extension. And so all of these files right here make up the singular cities shapefile, which is the type of GIS data we're going to be working with today in this specific exercise. Okay? Now what this means is that in order for us to have the one data file that we want to use, we need to have each of these different cities files in the same place. Okay? We never want to move this stuff. We never want to get creative and rename some of these things, because typically it causes trouble. All right? Or I guess another way to say it is, if you're going to move this city's shapefile to some other place and you're going to do it in File Explorer, you need to make absolutely sure that you have every single city's file right there, right? Or if you're going to rename it in here, you need to make sure that you rename every single city's file here in the exact same way. Okay? So be very careful if if you start to mess with this stuff. You see cities, countries, lakes, a lot of different things in here. And honestly, if you try to open it up, it may not open at all, or it may open up in a weird file. And so, yes, this all looks weird in here. But the good news is once we get into ArcGIS, it's going to make a lot more sense. Okay? So this is a good way to check and see what you've got. But for what we're going to do today anyway, we're not going to look at stuff inside File Explorer. We want to look at it in ArcMap. And so that's what we're going to do next. Okay, so to open up ArcMap, we need to go down to this little Windows thing down here in the lower left corner. We click on that and scroll down into the A section, and we find this ArcGIS folder. All right, and then in here, you'll note there's a lot of stuff that ArcGIS gives you when you install all of this. We're only going to use a few of these things in this class. Honestly, some of the stuff like Python, I don't think we're going to be getting into. That's a scripting language that's pretty cool stuff, but a little beyond what we're going to be covering. Same thing with ArcScene and ArcGlobe. That's some 3D stuff that, again, we're probably not going to get into at this moment. The most important thing that we'll be using is this ArcMap right here. ArcMap 10.6, that's what I'm using. If you don't have 10.6, not to worry. If you have 10.5 or something earlier than that, you should still be able to do everything we're going to be doing in this class. You will have some issues trying to open up the MXD files, the map document files. If it's been produced in, say, 10.6 and you try to open it up in 10.3, you can't do it. It doesn't actually let you work backwards in that way. And that's a complete scam. That's the man trying to get more money from you and make sure you keep updating their software. I think it's ridiculous, but it's the reality. It's what we're stuck with here. So we'll make the most of it. That's what we're gonna try to do. So for now, just click on ArcMap. We'll open that up, take a look at it. It may take a little while. It's going to load all this stuff. There we go. Okay, and we have a few things once this opens up. Now, number one, when you first open it, the software for the very first time, you get this getting started screen right here. Now, I've always felt that this is ridiculous, right? This kind of makes it look like you need help, like you need some hand holding through this whole process. So what I want you to do is we're going to be tough. We're going to be brave here. We're going to check this do not show this dialog in the future. Okay, which is simply a way of saying, like, we don't need this. Take us right to the thing. It's a cooler move. You look way cooler if you do that. I'm going to hit cancel there. Okay, so this is ArcMap. If you have any floating toolbars here, you can left click and hold on to them and drag them anywhere. If you bring it up to this section up here, it will dock it. It will, there we go, put it somewhere in here, and you can stack these things. You can put them wherever. So just be aware of that. You can move this stuff, and you will kind of figure out where you like to have stuff. And I'm going to move this one. See if I can get it to work. Also not going to let me. See, I don't like it there. This is taking way too long. Well, I'll just put it over here for now. Yeah, that's where I always wanted it. So yeah, feel free to experiment with this, play around with it. It can go wherever you want that stuff. Okay, but then once you're in here, it's this big sea of white and nothingness. There are a lot of buttons. There are a lot of kind of mysterious, menus and different things here. It may seem a tad intimidating don't worry about it. We're going to go through how to actually make something of this software. Okay, so we'll first, let's see, in fact, how do I want to do this? Here, I tell you what. I'm going to show you the one thing first that you will most likely do and freak out. For whatever reason, students always close this table of contents window. And it's just this, I think, a panic function. And so that disappears, and then you feel lost. And you'll see why when we start playing with data. So if that happens, don't worry. Just go up here to Windows and Table of Contents, and it comes right back, right? And it hasn't even deleted anything if you've been working on a map for a while or whatever. Don't worry about it. But that's how you get back there. Okay, so just remember that. Never forget. Another thing in here that is a useful thing, we're not going to use today, but we'll use in the future. We can go into the Windows. Actually, no, let's not do Windows. Let's go right here. We'll click on Arc Toolbox. And it's thinking slowly. There we go. And it's not in Windows. I want to say, yeah, it's in geoprocessing. That's where you can also select Arc Toolbox. But in here we have these red toolboxes, and then within them we have some tool sets, is the term I think ESRI uses. And then in there, these little hammer icons, those are the actual tools. Okay? And so you could, this is the 3D Analyst extension. If you have that loaded, you have access to all of these tools here. You have this analysis one. You've got different things like clip. Right? That's a useful one we'll use in this class. Or this overlay one, things like erase is fantastic. Spatial joins, unions, intersects. That's a lot of common stuff that we will use. So we're not going to use that tonight, but just be aware that's what our toolbox is. And we'll get into that and see some of the cool tools. That's some of the stuff that really makes GIS a powerful technology. So we will play with that. But for now, we're going to check that and close it. And then what's actually important today, I'm working here, is Arc Catalog. And so you can get it with this little icon here. I think, yeah, it's in this Windows thing here. Or you might have it on the right of your screen, just kind of hanging out right over there. And if I left click on that, it stays. Now, Arc Catalog is kind of like File Explorer, so that thing we were looking at earlier, but it's designed for ArcGIS and GIS data. Okay, so it's a similar idea. It's a way to find files or maybe manipulate files on your computer, but it's specific to GIS. And so that means that it cannot see certain files, things like PDF files, doesn't see them, okay, those specific file types, because they're just not part of GIS. So some things will be invisible to it, but as we'll see, it can do some cool stuff to the data files that we saw earlier. Okay, so in here, it's pretty limited, and I want to point out one thing. If you don't see that place where you saved your stuff, like let's say you saved it to the desktop and it's not there, you need to tell Arc Catalog where you want it to look. Okay, and so it's this little icon right here, this Connect To folder, where we've got this file folder and a plus sign and all that right there. If you click on that, what you do here is you just go through and you click in a specific area. So like if I wanted the desktop, I would just click on desktop and then hit OK, right? And then once I do that, which I've already done, it will show you the desktop there. So that if I save something there, I can open this up. I've got some like an existing map document here, some other files and so on, right? So if you don't see where it is you want to go, you need to create that folder connection. Now, one thing you don't want to do when you're doing this is to go in here and continue to just drill down into these different folders, you know, in this very specific way, because it's going to limit. You can only go directly there. So let's say this GIS master packet folder that I have, say I want to access that. What would make a lot more sense is to either go straight to the desktop or just to that main master packet. So I hit OK, and it gives me that. And that way, when I open it up, I can still get in to these different folders. I don't have to always go into one specific one, right? So just think about that as you're going through here. I don't really need that, so I'm going to disconnect it. Okay, what I need right now is this first one, this home document / ArcGIS. Hopefully you see that, and if you did save your stuff there, like I did, we see South America is right there, right? So navigate right now either to that document / ArcGIS folder to find your South America data, or to the desktop, wherever it is you saved it. Okay, navigate to the South America folder, and you should see something pretty cool. We now don't have all of these convoluted multiple files to make up one thing. We just see cities.shp. So it's still the case that we have those 8 different cities files, the .shp, the .shx, and the dbf, and all that different stuff. Those are still there, but ArcCatalog is simply showing it to us as cities.shp. And this greenish rectangle and the 3 dots in there, that's the icon for a shapefile. Again, the specific file type, and we'll talk more about those later on. And the fact that it has those little dots in there means it's a point shapefile. All right, so if I left click and hold, and just drag this in, you'll see that there are just these points, right? Just these dots or little diamond shaped things around here. You can make out the rough shape of South America, the Caribbean, and part of Central America right there. Okay, so that's a point shapefile. If we go back into catalog, we also have countries, lakes, this lat long, and rivers. Unfortunately, I don't think you can drag in, yeah, that didn't work. You can't drag in all of these at once, or at least I don't think you can when it's a shapefile, but feel free to experiment. I may be wrong. Things update, things I forget how to do, so, experiment with this stuff as you're going along. There's a good chance you can figure out a better way to do it than I can. But for the meantime, since I don't think we can do anything else, I'm just going to drag these in one at a time from here. Okay, so just go through and get everything here from ArcCatalog. And there are some other ways to bring data into ArcMap. We'll see that later on. But for now, I want you to get familiar with ArcCatalog. So this is the way we're doing it right here. All right, so once you have everything in here, kind of look around. You should have these 5 different layers is the term we're going to use, or features. It's another GIS term. So each of these, the cities, rivers, lat long, lakes, countries, these are different map layers or features depicting different things. And they're pretty self-explanatory. Things like, cities in this specific region, or rivers in this specific region, and so on. All right, okay, so we brought all these in here. Now the first thing we want to do, now that we have these in here, is save our work. And I will stress this over and over tonight, and continue to stress this. We want to save always. Often. Save as much as you possibly can, because stuff happens. Things crash. It can be a real pain. All right, so save your work. So I'm going to hit, this is the way I do it. You can do Control S like it's showing you here. I always just go to this little floppy disk icon, mainly because I'm old and a floppy disk just looks familiar to me. You can also go in here, File, and hit Save. There's no need when we're starting out here to do save as or save a copy, so simply hit save, however you want to do that. Find a place in which you want to save it. I'm going to here, hit the drop down. Let's see, I want documents. I'm going to save it into my ArcGIS folder, and I'm even going to put it in South America. That way everything is just in the same place, and I don't want to call it untitled.mxd. I want to give it a name that has some meaning. So I'm going to just put in South. I'm going to do underscore America. Right there, I don't have to add that .mxd. It'll do that. But if you note, I don't have a space in here. And that's important when you're working with GIS. Get in the habit of not having any spaces. Also, don't put any clever things in there, you know, the ampersand or the pound sign or any of that stuff, because ArcGIS historically hasn't liked that. It used to be, and I think it's gotten a lot better, but it used to be the case where if you had a space in a single file name, it would freak out. And it wouldn't tell you why it's freaking out. It just didn't like the fact that there was a space in the name, and so all of your work would be for nothing, right? So make sure, get in the habit of not having a space, either doing that underscore. You can also use capital letters, right, if that works to help it out, or whatever. But just keep your names simple, no spaces, and you'll be fine. Okay, so I'm going to hit save. So I'm good right there. So I'm ready to go. If something crashes, I don't have to redo my work. Okay, now in here, one key thing to be aware of is the fact that ArcGIS is going to draw what you see in the order in which it's set up in the table of contents. Okay, so the thing on the bottom, in this case countries, is going to be drawn first on the map screen. And then lakes are drawn on top of the countries, and then this lat long grid is drawn on top of that, and then rivers, and then cities. Okay, now if we're in this specific view, if I highlight here, it's this list by drawing order button. If that's highlighted, you can drag these things and reposition them, and that will change the drawing order. Okay, now one good way to really see how this works, I'm going to take this lat long grid, which I always like to have with some of these big maps of continents or the globe or you know, oceans or whatever. I like to have that lat long grid behind there for a reference point. I always, not only do I like to have it there, but I like to have it underneath the countries themselves. So the countries will kind of pop out, and the latitude and longitude lines will move back into the background because they're not the most important thing on the map that we're going to be making, right? And so you can see, because I drag that to the bottom, that is what was drawn first. Okay, and I like that. I'm going to leave that there. And since I just did something that I like, I'm also going to hit save just to be safe. Okay. So we're not going to play around with totally reordering this stuff. I'm just going to show you how to do a few things, and I'm going to leave it up to you guys to actually make an attractive map by the end here. Okay, so you know at this point how to manipulate stuff, drag it up and down to change the drawing order. Okay, another thing that you can do, you can change the actual colors that are selected. Yours may match what I have on here, maybe totally different. It's just this random thing that ArcGIS does. So when you bring this data into ArcGIS, it's gonna show up with these pastel colors. It's not going to be attractive. You're going to need to change it to make it look like a nice quality finished product by the time you're done with this, right? So an easy way to change some of the colors, I'll do countries right here, is just to left click on what they call the swatch. So in this case, this little bluish rectangle underneath countries. If I left click on that, it'll bring this up, this symbol selector. I can hit this fill color, drop down, and I can pick whatever color I want to be in the middle. Just to prove a point, I'm going to pick this angry pink right here, and I'm going to hit OK. And so it changes it right there. Now here's the deal. With you guys, as you're submitting your first map, I'm going to be nice in terms of the colors that you have selected. If you're the kind of person who looks at this just violent pink and you think, oh, that is beautiful, okay, you can go with it for now. As the semester progresses, we're going to tone that kind of stuff down. We're going to work toward attractive and somewhat conservative map. So, pick something, ideally, that isn't offensive to the eye, that isn't going to be shocking, isn't going to be harsh. And think about mapping conventions. Right now, these rivers are green. Rivers typically are blue on maps. And so if I click on that swatch, I have a few options. They have a default river right here, where if I select that, it will just make everything blue in this nice river color. Or if I don't like that specific blue, maybe I want to go for something lighter, or I want to go for something darker. I'll leave that up to you based on the other colors that you have in here. Okay? But that's how you can quickly begin to change some of these colors, to manipulate stuff. And another thing, like with countries here, don't forget that you have this fill color, but you also have the outline color. Okay? It defaults to this gray, but you can get some cool results in messing around with that stuff, right? With the white there, it gives it a very distinct look. You can also, if I use this tan color in here, using a darker brown, kind of just makes it a nicer, smoother transition from one polygon, or in this case country, to the next. So feel free, play around with the stuff, experiment, do whatever makes you happy here in terms of color. And we'll talk more about color and the cartography stuff later on. Okay, so that's how we start to manipulate that. Okay. Another thing that you're going to want to do is turn on labels. And so what's cool about GIS is it's not just this shape stuff in here. With every shapefile we have what's called an attribute table. And so I'm going to right click on countries and select open attribute table. Okay? And in here, this is part of the shapefile. So every shape, every country we have here has this record attached to it, right? The different country names. And so you'll have some different coded stuff. This FID, it's feature ID. That's a database thing. The shape thing, it's the database thing inside ArcGIS. And then some of this other stuff is kind of international coding. May be important, may not be important to you. It won't be until you get to country name right here that you see stuff like Brazil and Bolivia, and you'll see more stuff as you go. So explore that. You can scroll, around either, right and left or up and down. And so you can see these different, country name, long name, all sorts of different versions of the name and the status, what kind of nation is it, or is it a nation, or is it some territory, colony, whatever it might be. Okay, so you got a few different things right there. Okay, I'm going to close that, and so now I'm going to hit right click on countries, and I'm going to go down here to label features. Okay, and so with label features, I turn that on, or click that, and you see there's Brazil, there's Bolivia, and that's pulling from that attribute table. So that's how it knew to put Brazil in the country of Brazil, and Peru over here, and Colombia, and so on, right? It's connected to that attribute table. Now, unfortunately, it's going to default to this Arial font, 8-point stuff. It's not really easy to read or see. So typically you're going to want to change that. Right? It's also frustrating. You can see with the Bahamas up here, you have multiple labels. Same thing with French Polynesia and the Cook Islands out there. Hawaii is simply called the United States repeatedly. So it's not perfect, but it's a start. Okay? And to get it closer to perfect, if we right click on countries and we go to properties, we'll wait for that to open up. Here we go. We want to go to the Labels tab. Mine just happens to be there. You might be here in General, say. So if you want to get to Labels, just go to Labels, left click on that. And so in here we have this check for Label Features. If I uncheck that, hit Apply, our labels go away. I can check that, hit Apply, they'll turn right back on. Okay, the label field, this is pulling from the attribute table again. If I like that country name, fantastic. If I want the long official name, I can pick that. Let's see, and like you can see the Falkland Islands, which are kind of hard to see right down here, but if I do that and hit Apply, yeah, it spells out Falkland Islands, and it gets into the extended full name of some of these places. Okay, so you pick what you think looks good, but that's how we choose that stuff. And then in here, this is where we can start to pick different fonts. We can get into different size, color, bold, italicized, and so on. And if you hit symbol, oh, wait, it should pull up another. There we go. Thing here, it has some defaults. You're free to use them if you want for now, although I try to avoid these defaults. I never want my map to look like it came from ArcGIS. That's one of my goals, is always to make it look like maybe it came from ArcMap, maybe not, right? So try to avoid these default things. Go for something a little more personal, a little more stylish, a little more interesting. But you can go through, find stuff. You'll have different fonts than I have loaded on mine, but you can pick whatever, right? Whatever you think looks good. And you can experiment with sizes. You can experiment with bold or not. This edit symbol, if I go deeper into here, I have some more options. And I'm not going to get into this stuff with this specific lesson, but feel free to, again, play around with these different things, see what they do, see what you like. But as always, save, have backups and stuff just in case you really screw stuff up. I'll just leave it like this for now to show you the change. All right, so it made it bigger, which was cool for, say, like Brazil. But then in some places, like in the Caribbean, which we're not really going to focus on here, it gets kind of out of control, right? So again, it takes some tweaking, some playing around with this stuff. Okay, so be patient. Don't worry about it being perfect with this first map. We'll continue to learn some tools. So you can come back to this first South America map at the end of the semester and really turn it into something beautiful that you're proud of. Okay, but that's how you change the labels. Okay, I'm just going to hit OK. Now another thing, these cities, we got a lot in here. In fact, I'm going to zoom in. Let's just zoom into Peru. And to make it really clear, I'm just going to do, let's just do that for now. So each black point or black circle on here is a different city. And I can turn on, again, the labels. And I can go into properties and change these labels. Now, one issue, though, is we have a lot of these Peruvian cities here. They all are kind of treated the same, right? We don't know which one is, say, the capital city, or which is the biggest city in Peru, and which is the smallest, and so on. They're just all kind of there, right? So we want to do something in there. And really, I think the best thing for the map we're going to make of just South America in general is to get rid of some of these cities. Now, if we right-click and hit Open Attribute Table, we'll come back in here. This is for the cities feature class, or for that layer. So we have the city name, like we have, in fact, here we have Puerto Maldonado, which is in Peru. If I move this here, it's right here, the edge of the Amazon. And so if we, so that's connected. That's where that name is coming from. Now, if I select this, it's that turquoise blue in the attribute table. You also note it highlights the point itself. Okay, so if you see something here and you're not exactly sure, where it is, or same thing if I select something out here, I can make sure I find the record in the attribute table. That's how that works. And if you accidentally click something, and you don't want it, select this whitish square here, clear selection, right? So I hit that and it goes away. Okay, and you also have a select tool in that clear selected features thing in this main toolbar right here. Okay, so that's a way to check that out. Also, I realize I've been zooming in and stuff. Haven't been explaining that, but it's simply this main toolbar, the zoom in, zoom out magnifying glass. In fact, when I finish this here, I'll show you how that works because that's important too. All right, don't forget that. Back to the cities. Okay, so we have our cities here. All right, now if we scroll over, this actually has this population rank and class. And the way this works is the lower the rank number, like a number 1, means the higher, a higher population, right? Or a rank of 7 has less than 50,000 people, where this rank of 2 has 1 million to just under 5 million people. Okay, so that's what that means. So remember pop rank, we're going to use that in just a bit. Okay, so we'll close that. Okay, back to this really quick. This whole zoom in, zoom out thing, it's kind of, well, I don't think it's that tricky, but sometimes students have an issue with it. What you want to do is take your magnifying glass in the upper left corner of wherever the area is you want to zoom to. Like let's say I want to see this area around Puerto Maldonado. Okay, I'm going to put it up here in this upper left corner. I'm going to left click once and hold it and not let go. And then as I drag the mouse, it's going to draw this rectangle. And I bring this new rectangle, bring that opposite corner to the opposite corner of the area in which I want to see, and then I let go. And what it does is it zooms right into that rectangle, right? Or as close as the screen can actually get to that rectangle. Okay, so that's how that works. If you make a mistake, say I accidentally, make some click like this, or I accidentally do that and I don't know where I am, you can always hit this go back to previous extent button and it will take you to the place where you just were. And I can keep doing that until I get here. Right? And if you really screw up and you don't know where you are, this globe, this full extent button, if you hit that, it takes you out to the full extent of the data you have, which in this case is the entire world. Okay, so I don't want that, so I'm just going to zoom in back here to South America. Let's also change this to something more manageable. Okay, all right, so hopefully you're with me still. Hit save. Okay, so now what we want to do is we want to get rid of some of these smaller cities. Okay, just have the big ones in here. Right click on cities, go to properties. Again, we'll wait. And now go into definition query, that tab, and go into query builder. And so what we're going to do is we're going to speak to the computer through this scripting language right here. We're going to tell it to do something. Okay, and this has to be specific in terms of what's capitalized, what has double quotes around it, what has single quotes, where spaces are. It can be a pain. So the easiest way to do this is to click on some of these things. And so this is taking FID, city name, all that stuff that's coming from the attribute table. Come back down here to this pop underscore rank. And I'm going to double click that. And so it puts it down here. So it says select from cities where. I'm going to say pop rank, and we want it to be the bigger cities, right? But it's actually because the bigger cities have the smaller number, we want to use the less than symbol, okay? Which is kind of weird, but we want like cities that have a rank of 1 and 2, so we'd say like less than 3, okay? And if I hit this get unique values, it gives me all of my possible choices. Now I knew that I only had like a 1 through 7 ranking system here, but sometimes it's nice to do this and just select from here so that you don't screw up the formatting. So like if I hit 3, I double click that, you see it's just the number 3. It doesn't have these double quotes or single quotes or anything like that. So there you go. I'm happy with that. And what I'm going to do too is hit verify, and if it says this, that it was successfully verified, it means, okay, it's good. If it says error, which it luckily didn't, but if it did, it would mean I screwed something up. Like if I delete that and hit verify, there's the error. Simply because those little double quote guys weren't there. And now it's okay. So that's how picky it is. But it's happy. I'm going to hit OK. And I'm going to move this so you can see it. But I'm going to hit apply and then just watch the cities. A bunch disappear. Now we only have a few. We have Lima there. And I think that's the only Peruvian city we have left. Okay, so that got rid of everybody else. Maybe if that gets rid of too many, you can change that to 4 and hit apply. It brings some others in there, right? So you can experiment with this and put in as many cities as you want, you know, and go from there. Okay, I'm not going to tell you how to do this. Just make it look, again, attractive, something that's a meaningful map, you know, by the time you're done. Okay, so that's the query builder thing. That's how you can limit some of the results that you have, put in specific results. It didn't actually delete any of those cities. It simply hid them. It's only drawing the ones we want. So that gave us a little bit of control. And I'll just leave this like that for now and hit OK. And I'm going to hit save just in case. Okay, now the last thing I want to show you here before you just start messing with this stuff is the difference between the data view and the layout view. Okay, right now we're in the data view, and down here in the lower left, see this little button in the corner, and these are ridiculous icons. They pretty much look the same, but we have data view here and then layout view next to it. We also have this refresh, which is a case if you ever have, you know, a bunch of stuff drawing on the screen and you click your mouse, it freezes. It stops stuff from drawing. It's a way to speed up the processing and your map making workflow here. If you ever do that, you hit this refresh button and it will just redraw everything. Same with this pause. It's just if you need to you know, mess with them stuff, you're tired of things drawing and redrawing, you can just pause the whole deal right there. Okay, but for now, select layout view, and what that gives us is what this would look like if we hit print right now. So we have this sheet of paper. Mine is defaulted to an 8.5 by 11 inch sheet of paper in portrait mode. Yours, I'm guessing, looks the same way. If you didn't want it in portrait mode, you can right click in the white of the paper here, hit page and print setup. There's that landscape thing there. You can change the size of the paper, and this will, you know, depend on what kind of printer you have hooked up to the thing. But that's so you can change some of the actual page stuff and actually get in and, you know, make it ready to print. I'm going to leave this as is because it's South America. It works in this orientation, and all you need to do is you know, this 8.5 by 11 map. Okay, so we have this here. Now, one thing, I was using the zoom in, zoom out stuff. These tools work in the data view, okay, or what we call the data frame right here. Now this, excuse me, is our layout toolbar. Okay, and if you don't have this, if you don't have any of these toolbars, I don't think I showed this. If you right click in this grayish area up here, these are all the possible toolbars you have to add in here. So if you didn't have something that you wanted to use, you just select it here. Let's say this editor one, I select that. It brings in the editor toolbar, right? If I needed that. So if you don't see layout or any of these other things, you know, just right click in here and find something that seems like it would work. Okay, but this layout one, it has this magnifying glass, just like the other one, but it's got a page behind it. And what this does, it's the same thing. You click and drag, but it zooms into the page itself, right? And if I zoom back out here, that does that. If I use this one on the left and I do this zoom thing, the page stays in one place, but the map itself, the map data That's what's actually doing the zooming. So just keep that in mind. There are different ways to zoom in and out of stuff. And as always, if you freak out, you've got this back thing here. You've got this full extent thing on the main toolbar. In here, it's the same deal. That back to the previous extent, and this thing with the 4 arrows going out, it's zoom to the whole page. Okay, so that's how you can navigate. All right, so we have that. What you need to do is zoom in or out so that the map just it's where you want it. Okay, and if it's almost there, you can do this fixed zoom out a little bit. Maybe that's too far. I don't want Antarctica, say, in there, so I can then click and drag, and you just keep working until you're happy with where everything is. Okay, and again, once you're happy, hit save. Now, to get it ready to be a final product, and before you get into this stuff, you should have already played with the different labels, the colors, made sure everything looked exactly how you want it to look. Okay, but once you're in here ready to make the map, then we can start adding some of the map elements. And to do that, right click up here and get this draw toolbar if you don't already have it. Okay, and so it's the way it has this drawing thing, this little selector arrow, a few different things. This will be useful for your layout view. And what I want you to do first, before you add any map elements, is add this rectangle thing. So select that, give you this little crosshair deal, and you're going to left click, hold, and drag, and then release, and it will draw a rectangle. And I want you to do this, and this is where you're going to put your map title, put in your north arrow, your scale bar, any of that kind of stuff. Keep it all in this neat little box. And for whatever reason, it defaults to yellow interior with this gray border. It's hideous. Don't ever leave it like that. Okay, and if I double click on it, it will allow me to change that. So, white or a shade of gray, you can change the outline to a black, whatever you want to do. It's up to you, but don't leave it as that generic yellow thing. Okay, and then for your title, go back up to your draw toolbar and use this text thing, this little letter A. Click on that, and you can just left click, and it will say generically text, and you can put in your title. Right now, it's going to be small. Just type it in, hit enter, and it's good. Once you've done that, then you can double click on it. Come in here, you can change. If you misspelled something, you can change that. If you want to have, say, go on 2 lines, you can do something like this. Unfortunately, and I don't know why it's set up this way, but from here, if you want to actually change the font or anything else, you have to select change symbol. And so in here, then we can change it to, whatever font we want, whatever size we want. Hit OK, hit apply. If you like it, great. If you don't, keep messing with it. Okay, but that's how we make our title. Then you should, for this map anyway, we're going to go up here to Insert, and I want you to select a scale bar or scale bars that work, a north arrow of some kind, and also go ahead and put in this scale text as well. Okay, and so this should make sense even if you haven't taken other geography courses, if you're not totally clear on some of these different types of scale and stuff like that. We'll cover that later. But add these 3 different things right here. We don't really need a legend for this specific map, so don't worry about it. This other stuff you can ignore it for now. But things like a north arrow. On this specific map, we can in fact place one, and I'll get into when you put one and when you don't later on in the course. But feel free to go through here, pick something that works. Again, I have some that I think are acceptable to use, and I have some that I would never, ever, ever use. I'm not going to tell you to make your map yet, but we will get to that. And just a clue, stuff like this 3D stuff, don't ever use that. That's horrendous. But again, you pick what you like. So pick a north arrow. Okay, and this insert, in fact, let me just pick one. I'll just stick with this first one right here. Pick one, you hit OK, and it just throws it on there. Okay, then it's up to you to move it wherever. You can resize it if you need to. Just keep in mind they're typically going to be a lot bigger than they appear, on the screen when you actually print the thing out. So don't make it too big. This insert scale bar, same kind of deal. There are different choices in here. Play around with that. Okay, and also you can go into properties, and you can change the units that are used. This adjust division value thing, change that to adjust width, and you're able to change the actual units. This one, it defaults to decimal degrees. Nobody even thinks in that distance, so change it to something like miles or kilometers, or do one of each, right? And go through here, play around with these different things, hit OK, and if you're happy, great. You can see this one is way too small for this map, so I can go double click back on it. Okay, in here clearly 7.5 miles isn't enough, but I can say 200 and hit OK and say, okay, that looks a little better, right? Change it, adjust it, do whatever it is you want to do. Okay, but your final map should be roughly this extent, so it should show all of South America. We should have the countries labeled, the rivers labeled, the cities queried out, so we just have select cities, and those should also be labeled. Feel free to label the latitude and longitude lines, mess around with those things, mess around with the color of stuff. And when you're happy with that, come into layout view, add a title, north arrow of some type, the scale bar, the scale text, just make it look like a real map. Okay, hit save a lot, back stuff up, and when you're done, when you have it to be, it's a map that you're proud of, hit save, of course, but then go to File, down here to Export Map. Okay, and this is an important final step. Hit Export Map and save as type. Save it as a PDF. Okay, and name it whatever. South America might be good practice for you to also put your last name in the file itself, just in case there's any mix-up. You can leave this stuff down here at the bottom as is, shouldn't be a big deal, but just do that, hit save, and that will save this map, but as a PDF. That way you have something you can upload into Canvas. If you save this MXD and upload this MXD file, I can't see it in Canvas. And we'll get into this later, but I can't see it even if I download your MXD file and bring that onto my computer. It's a fussy thing, and again, we'll talk about that. So if you save it as a PDF, or export it, I should say, as a PDF, upload that into Canvas, I'll be able to see it. I'll be able to grade you. You'll get points for this. Okay, so make sure you do that as your final step, and then get into Canvas and actually upload the map itself. Okay, that's what I want you to do. And just to show you and what I'm hoping for, I already played around with this earlier. I'll show you my PDF. Now this is not perfect. It doesn't have to look like this. It's just something that I did. Okay, so this was my final product right here. And this is all in ArcMap. This is all stuff you can do. It just takes a little time, a little playing around with stuff. Okay, so play around with it for now. Don't worry about it being perfect. Not looking for perfection right now. I just want to have a decent map of South America. And once you're done, post it to Canvas and you're set for the week. Okay, and as always, feel free to communicate with me via email. Come into my office during my office hours if you're in the area. Also communicate with other people in the class. Do your best here, and best of luck, geographers.